Hi, this is Bob Herb with Robert Herb Photography. In this lesson, we are continuing the series, Why Underwater is Different, with a look at one of the most common editing mistakes underwater photographers make. When a photo looks flat, soft, or lifeless, it is tempting to reach straight for the presence tools like texture, clarity, dehaze, or vibrance. But underwater, those tools should not come first. Before presence can help, white balance and exposure need to build the foundation. When an underwater photo looks flat, the first instinct is usually to reach for the sliders that seem like a quick fix. Texture, clarity, dehaze, vibrance. Those are often the first controls photographers grab because they seem like the fastest way to add punch and detail. But that instinct is where the problem often begins. Here is what happens next. When presence comes too early, it can make the problems louder. The water starts to look heavy. Subjects can look crunchy. Colors can feel fake. And backscatter becomes more obvious. That is why presence is not the first step. It amplifies whatever is already in the image. This is the key idea. Presence does not fix the foundation. It amplifies what is already there. If the color is off, presence can make that color problem stronger. If the exposure is off, presence can make the shadows heavier or the highlights harsher. That is why the foundation has to come first. Fix the white balance, balance the exposure, then let presence help. This is why the order still matters. In underwater editing, the sequence is not random. White balance sets the color foundation. Exposure sets the tonal foundation. Only after those two are in place should presence start adding depth, detail, contrast, and life. That is the difference between editing harder and editing smarter. Foundation first, drama second. White balance comes first because color affects everything that follows. If the image is too blue, too green, or too magenta, presence tools can make that color problem stronger. That is why we correct color cast before adding punch. White balance gives the image a believable color foundation. Once that foundation is in place, texture, clarity, dehaze, and vibrance have something better to work with. Exposure comes second because tonal balance controls how detail appears. If the image is too dark, presence can make the shadows feel heavier. If the highlights are too bright, clarity or dehaze can make them feel harsh. Exposure gives the image breathing room. It protects the highlights, opens the shadows, and helps separate the subject from the water. That gives presence something useful to work with. Once white balance and exposure are set, presence becomes much more useful. Now you can use texture to bring out fine detail. Clarity can add mid-tone definition. Dehaze can help cut through the water haze. And vibrance can bring color back without pushing everything too far. The key is restraint. Use small moves and look for natural results. As you adjust presence, watch for the warning signs. If the subject starts to look crunchy, back off. If the water becomes dark and heavy, back off. If the color starts to look fake or backscatter becomes more visible, back off. A good underwater edit should not call attention to the sliders. It should call attention to the subject. The final takeaway is simple. Structure before drama. Start with white balance. then balance the exposure. Then use Presence to add depth, detail, and life. When Presence comes at the right time, it can make an underwater image stronger, clearer, and more engaging. But when Presence comes too early, it often makes the problems louder. If you want the full breakdown, read the blog post linked in the description. You can also download my free guide, 10 Lightroom Fixes Every Underwater Photographer Should Know. And if this helps, subscribe for more underwater Lightroom lessons.